Hopefully everybody can hear us okay. We have a few people out in the chat. Thank you so much everybody for showing up at the just the last second here. I got home just a couple hours ago and I'm kind of tired, but I'm at that point of being tired where you get that kind of second wave of energy. And at this point I'm kind of rearing to go. Also too, one of the good things is I spoke. Hey, can everybody hear me out? Okay, in the chat. Just let me know, because I also have Buster here as well. We'll be talking about something pretty important here. So anyway, oh good, we've got 22 watching already. Perfect. Just let us know if we sound okay. All right. So the thing is, yep, everyone says we sound good. Perfect. All right. Thanks, Mandy. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Dick. Thanks. Great. Perfect. Perfect. All right. So just a couple hours ago, you saw what I sent out here in terms of the icon for, and I see it switched back, and I don't know how to do that yet to where it stayed with the original icon of this little blue beam in the sky, Buster. So what I did as a backup thing is what I'll do for, I guess, the description, and what I'm going to do for the chat now is, if you missed the icon beforehand, here's my Twitter feed. Go ahead and take a look at that. If you can open up another tab and take a look at that, and we'll all look at this together. This picture, this blue picture with this kind of translucent blue thing. I don't know exactly what it is. You had some ideas on it, Buster. What are your first impressions? And for anybody who doesn't follow me on Twitter, it's hard. I get it almost every week, that people don't get notifications, including my contacts. So just, the best thing you can do is follow me on Twitter if you don't mind, even if you make just a Twitter account just to follow me. So, you can put the bell on Twitter, and apparently the people who follow me on Twitter are the ones that get notified all the time. If you don't get notified all the time, the only way that I think that we can solve the situation, because obviously YouTube is not going to help, is to follow me on Twitter, and that way you'll know beforehand if you want to get information right away, because that's the only way. It's the only answer I have for you. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do for you in terms of YouTube not notifying you, and I'm sorry for that, but I'm sorry. It's just the way it is. I don't have that kind of power. Anyway, Buster, what are your first, when you see this picture, what are your first, impressions?
It's hard to say for sure. Definitely, I don't think it's a lens flare. I've done photography before, and that's definitely not a lens flare. It doesn't look like it's entirely physical. Like, it doesn't look like it's completely made out of some kind of material. I'm thinking more along the lines of some kind of energy form, or some kind of non-corporeal energy intelligence, something like that. Definitely doesn't seem physical at all, but it's definitely, the camera is definitely picking it up for sure.
Right. So yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. It seems translucent. Um, we're in a holographic universe, so obviously something that's holographic is probably going to come across that way, particularly if it's somewhere just outside of the normal vibrational frequency that will create something that's solid, like solid matter. So I think, kind of piggybacking on what you were saying, I think that all of those descriptions kind of put together. So the significance of this picture is, my contact spoke to me as soon as I got back into town, and he was saying that this picture was taken in a mid-sized American city, like in the tweet, right at the same time that Lockheed Martin was doing one of their shindigs. Exactly what it is they were doing, I don't know. And obviously, somehow, all of this is tied. All of this is tied together. And I think if you live around or near this city, you might have seen this, because this was obviously spotted by a lot of people in this mid-sized American city. So whether or not Lockheed Martin is connected, I really don't know, and I can't say, because the problem is you'll have a lot of places that are militarized, like San Diego or something like that, and you'll see a lot of strange things. But that, that doesn't necessarily mean that, that there actually any kind of correlation there. And that's part of the title here, is that we can't correlate that all the time, and we can't suddenly jump and blame a particular outfit or organization, private or something in the military. So this was there, and it was up in the sky for long enough that people were able to go inside, get their phones, take the pictures. And I don't have any information on whether or not it moved. I have no information on whether or not any other kind of changes happened in the atmosphere, or if it did anything else to people. I was simply told that this was up in the sky. It was long enough for people to take the picture. And yeah, it was at the same time that Lockheed Martin happened to be in town doing their thing. So it's very odd. And apparently a lot of people were talking about it in this particular town. And obviously for MSN, it was a complete blackout of news. So no one talked about it whatsoever. So there you go.
Yeah, and there has been a lot of strange stuff going on lately with the whole Google situation earlier in the week, where there was a lot of Google downtime, and people were wondering what was going on with that. So a lot of people have speculated it was a cover-up, or at least, a lot of things have been removed. And then later on in the week, also, YouTube is doing this kind of purge where they're getting rid of a lot of channels and a lot of information which they deem to be offensive, or, along the lines of a conspiracy theory type thing. So there's a lot of things going on, and I think it's all related too. Once you kind of get an idea about the subject matter, you kind of connect the dots.
Right. Exactly. So anybody new to the channel, in order for this isn't like a one and done kind of channel. It's kind of an ongoing dialogue that we have with the audience. So I see Turtle Dove here says, what does this energetic color signify? I don't know what any of it signifies. I'm just simply saying I'm just relaying what was said to me. As people are asking about Chick, we were talking about doing this is a new time for the Lost and Found Bin. This is not the Lost and Found Bin because it's Buster and I, but Chick and I next week will be doing the new Lost and Found Bin at a new time at 4:30, just because of my time constraints during the weekend. So this will be the time that we normally do the Lost and Found Bin. Buster fortunately could step up because Chick had I sort of sprung it on her because I didn't think I would have the energy after flying for 4.5 hours in the air to get on here and talk to folks. But then, I got this information, and I just wanted to get it out there. And the thing about that I wanted to do and is that I'll go ahead and speculate with the best of them, but really what I want to do is try to give you the raw information, unvarnished, and you kind of make of it what you will. And I'm not going to pretend to know. I don't think any of us do pretend to actually know anything really. I'll give you my speculation, I'll give you my opinion, but I think what makes this YouTube channel different from others is I'm not saying I'm an expert on anything, or that I know exactly what's going on. I'm just simply going to pass on to you this kind of information so you can put it together for yourself. Also too, there's 2 links inside here about 2 Alaska rocket launch failures back in 2018. And this is actually tied to this is tied to what my contact was saying to me is very important. My contact was saying, and I relayed this earlier to Buster, the information with this and some other things is that there was a university, and I don't know if it was a university that is outside of Alaska that was going to Alaska, or a university that is actually native to Alaska. They were sending things into space, and like microwaves. They were sending microwaves into space, and the microwaves were hitting some impenetrable barrier and bouncing back. And that was shut down by the government. And somehow, in some way, this too is also connected to that. What does all of that mean? I don't know. Am I inadvertently relaying messages? I have no idea. But I'm telling you that this is important to the overall picture. And I'm trying to put together the pieces. We're all working on this mystery together. And I think that kind of makes it kind of cool that we're all doing it together and we're trying to figure this thing out together. And I think one of the most important things, Buster, that I read inside this is that it says here the Federal Aviation Administration said in a statement to Space News, the rocket experienced a mishap. And it says many have taken this to mean that at some point after the rocket launched, it failed in some way. But Craig Campbell, president of Alaska Aerospace, which operates the launch site, told Space News that Astra Space is very pleased with how the launch turned out. That's just weird.
Yeah, it's very weird when you kind of look at it and you're thinking, okay, well, if there was a failure, you would expect them to be a little bit upset or, disappointed, but they seem to be perfectly fine with whatever result they got. And it kind of seemed like after you read both documents, they kind of expected at least some kind of malfunction, or at least they had an idea of what was going to happen. And the whole thing seems very kind of suspicious when you look at both articles and you read them, because it's very kind of secretive, and the way they kind of didn't answer questions after the mishap and really didn't give very much information about both launches or why they failed.
And what I'm really curious, because you're the most intrepid researcher I know, what you can come up with the information I was just given about this microwave thing, that somehow all of this is all put together. All this stuff is put together, and it's a very complicated mosaic that I'm trying to understand. And I know earlier as well, with all this situation that's going on right now, Chick was saying that we were having shifts off the charts, and I'd love to see the Schumann resonance. I'd love to see the data on that for today and yesterday. And if anyone was following me on Twitter last night, I was not intoxicated. I was completely sober. I was having these very, very vivid, odd dreams where I felt as if a helicopter was right above me. And it was kind of terrified me. And then I woke up and it was dead silence in the room. And then as I was tweeting out, I see this U-77 star. That's not some kind of like code or something. I guess I fell back asleep, and then I think a minute later I came back to. Let's see, that was 12:24 a.m. And then the first one I did. Oh no, I just jumped out of there. Oh, here we go. Cool. And then the first one I tweeted out was at 12:23. And between tweets, it's only 1 minute that I went under. It felt like I was asleep for hours. And then I came back, and it was just so bizarre, the whole situation. And I felt as if I was, there was a helicopter like directly above me, and I was like running or something. But then I came back and I was in the room and I was perfectly fine. I was A-okay. Everything was cool. And as far as I can tell, they didn't chip me or anything like that, like you usually hear. There was nothing like that. So we've got a lot of interesting puzzles here for anybody that's interested in those kinds of things. Or perhaps we are, and Buster and I have talked about this, we are inadvertently relaying information that we have no idea that we're relaying. So I don't know. It's very odd. What do you think? What do you think, Buster?
I think definitely all things kind of space related, or kind of these odd phenomenon that seem to keep happening lately, are probably things to keep an eye on, things to be aware of. And, you can draw your own conclusions on what they are or what they mean, or if there's some kind of alternative purpose or agenda. We're, like you said before, we're just kind of reporting this as we go. We're just doing this on the fly. None of this is scripted. We're just kind of reporting on the information, giving our opinions, and then, not everybody's obviously going to agree, but, we're just basically doing what we can as we find it out. So a lot of the stuff with the space, like I said, it's probably things to keep an eye on. I know NASA tweeted out yesterday that they're offering now visitations to the International Space Station for $35,000 a night. And what they're going to do is get you all trained up, do the whole procedure and get you everything set up, and then basically you pay the money, and then they'll take you aboard the International Space Station. I thought that was very odd.
Well, why that's never going to happen is they were saying that Richard Branson was saying that more than a decade ago. I remember in the late 90s they keep saying, didn't Justin Timberlake go up into space or something, or he was in like boot camp for like astronauts or something? Like it was Justin Timberlake, right? It was like 15 years ago or something, right?
It could be. I don't specifically remember that, but yeah, there's a lot of talk going on lately. Even with those flashes with the moon, I think somebody tweeted that out the other day. And like you said, there's also too. There's been a lot of every day. I keep seeing articles about these asteroids that are apparently whizzing by Earth on this near collision course. You know, traveling at like 18,000 miles an hour, and it's like either every day or every other day, and it's very bizarre, very bizarre.
Yeah. And I, I said it was I tweeted this out more than a week ago that the moon was it's either going to come from the moon or the ocean. And someone has sent me I've seen more than one picture where it looks like it's the moon, only there are lights on the moon and they're very vivid lights as if there's a full-on civilization on the moon. I didn't put the information out because I can't, it's not, and to the person that sent it to me, thank you very much and I appreciate that. But I try to put out things that are something that either a source that I totally have been able to vet, or it's a mainstream news article or something akin to the mainstream news. Also, too, I like to do a lot of reshaping of reality, kind of word puzzle kind of thing, like what William Burroughs used to do. And that way, what it does is it helps you get into that state of mind. And that's what I was doing yesterday with that tweet from, the tweet we had from the guy from NASA. I forget specifically. I'm actually scrolling back over to that. Oh, it's Jim Bridenstine. He said, as POTUS said, NASA is using the moon to send humans to Mars. Right now, Mars Curiosity and NASA InSight are on Mars and will soon be joined by Mars 2020 rover and the Mars helicopter. And the narrative around this is that it's there's an entire narrative around this tweet. But what's really important, and I try to take a William Burroughs kind of approach to this, is you pay attention to the signs, and if you use this cut up method where you remove things out of place and you reorient, rather than he used to do books and newspapers, and what it would do is it would give you like these untold truths that are absolutely terrifying. And oftentimes what they would do in the cut up method, I think with some of his other cohorts of the Beat Generation, they would cut out entire random lines of the newspaper because they didn't have computers, obviously, in the 40s and the 50s, and then they would just throw them up, or they were somehow string them together, and the gibberish oftentimes would be predictive in nature, or it would be something they found out later to be true. And I thought, trying to apply that in a more digital manner, obviously we can't cut up our computer screens or anything, but just taking the idea of someone that official, if someone didn't have the narrative that was the massive narrative that was built around that tweet yesterday, and they were to take that tweet and they were just to look at it and then know what we all know on this channel, and you would start to think, well, that isn't that far out there in terms of it being ridiculous, because literally 6 months ago, UFOs were still officially considered absolutely ridiculous. Not only are they not ridiculous, not only is the Navy now either forming, or I'm sure they probably actually already have the paperwork for pilots to fill out. They're trying to look for money in order to expand different projects. So now UFOs are out in the open. And our reality had changed in not last week, but the week before last. In a week's time, the entirety of our understanding of what it is to be a human being has absolutely been upended. And the beauty in the whole thing, maybe about 2 or 3% of the population paid attention to it. Most of the population have no idea that they are living in an entirely different existence now. It's absolutely unrecognizable. And it happened right in front of them. And I don't know about you, Buster, but I don't condone Like there's this narrative that goes around YouTube, you know, the elite and the NWO, and they're all putting this together so they can microchip us or do whatever so they can bring along the apocalypse and goatmen and all the whole thing. And then there's like lizard people and the whole thing. But the idea that we're cattle, and I'm not saying that that's a good thing. What I'm saying is that when you do see that people don't care about something so incredible, you're really shocked at your fellow man, and I'm a bit dismayed, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to pay attention to nowadays, and people kind of they really just want to pay attention to what it is that they find interesting. And if they don't find UFOs interesting or anything that goes on in space, then they tend to not pay attention to it. And the evidence just keeps ramping up and ramping up. I tweeted out earlier in the week there was an interview with the Harvard professor who claims that that interstellar object Oumuamua is an alien probe, and he still has that stance, and that was like discovered in 2017, and he still says, yeah, it's not a natural phenomenon. It shouldn't be in our solar system. And
And
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, please, please. I thought you were done. No, please go ahead.
And it's been going on since 2017, and all this evidence keeps pointing to these unnatural phenomena that keep appearing in the skies, whether it be out in space or in our atmosphere, and then all this other stuff related to the moon. And you're right, not many people seem to either pay attention or to care. Yet all of this stuff is not only is it fascinating, it's all very important for sure.
And one thing I noticed is that there used to be this brigade of like powerful skeptics. They were just all over. And if you spoke anything out of line, they would just be all over you. And it's like now it's like nothing. No, nothing at all. Not one bit. They're nowhere to be found. And it's just it's so bizarre that they're not around anymore. It's like they just all ran and disappeared, because really what you have to make up for is the last 70 years of calling people buffoons or ridiculous, or because now that the government, their official stance is that UFOs exist. You actually have that PBS article I sent out earlier in the week saying, it was to the PBS crowd, saying that, which is, they're obviously very no, I'm not going to. I'm not going to characterize that crowd, but it's the PBS crowd. If you know who they are, you know what's up. And it's really funny that they're saying, "Well, I guess we have to live with UFOs, but that doesn't mean they're aliens." And it's like, it's so sad to see them clinging so hard. And it's like, man, I'm so sad, because you guys used to drive around boxy Volvos when I was a kid, and you had like, academy stickers and collegiate stickers to like private schools and really great universities on the bumper stickers of your cars. And it's like, man, you guys are really it's really sad. It's really sad. And it's like half of you people you should know anyway, because you work for think tanks or whatever, or are affiliated with think tanks that pilfer from the public anyway, and what I think is somewhat of an of a bit of a dishonest fashion. But anyway, that's my personal point of view. But it's like that article was so sad from NPR. I mean, come on, Buster.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these articles are just going to basically keep coming out, and those skeptics who kind of didn't believe in this stuff in the first place, I think it's going to hit them the hardest, because for the people who aren't paying attention, obviously it's not going to matter. But for the people who were the hardcore skeptics and said all this was just swamp gas, I think they're going to have a very difficult time once these articles keep ramping up. And who knows, maybe these phenomenon, like that picture that you started with, maybe people will be posting more of those in the next coming weeks or months. We'll have to wait and see. Basically, like you said, we're going to report this as we find out new information, but I kind of have a feeling that a lot of this stuff is basically just going to keep ramping up.
Yeah, and it's not one thing. You could take that photograph and go, okay, that's garbage. That's swamp gas, or whatever it is they want to call it. But we're talking about eventually, you've got enough hay where you've got a bale of hay, and it's huge. And that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about one thing that you can pick apart. We're talking about something becoming more and more massive. And it's getting to the point, my understanding about the UAP thing is it's beyond daily. It's almost constant at this point, and it's ramping up further. And something about the moon, and more and more things are coming out about the moon. And what I wanted to do was sort of do a retrospective of everybody who made fun of people or really just awful articles. But I have a feeling they're going to be scrubbed from the web, especially if they're from official sources that really laughed at people that were into fringe culture, particularly the UFO culture. And now it's coming. It's clearly, obviously coming, and it's going to be beyond mainstream. It's going to be a part of your daily lives. And like you said, what if it's just that it's going to be one day where they're going to, the people who are going to drive in the future, they're going to say part of your driving lesson is to not look up at the UFOs that'll be zipping by in the sky, or these translucent, semi-dimensional kind of, they're half in this dimension, half in the next dimension, spaceships. They're not spaceships. They're vibrational frequency ships. Don't pay attention to those while you're driving, or you could end up running a red light or something like that. That kind of change in reality is where it's already underway. And yeah, I think part of my understanding from my source, that was part of the Google crackdown. The political side of it, I'm not entirely sure, but there were images that got out, and there was video now that I know. There was video that had gotten out, and I have some snapshots allegedly of that video, and I put it out on Twitter. I put it on the community tab here and my Instagram. So it's out there. And allegedly it's the real deal. And yeah, it looks bizarre and odd, but people keep saying, well, that looks fake. Well, do you really know what's real? I mean, how do you know what's fake? I mean, I'm not entirely sure. All I know is
kind of to speak to that specifically, when people say something like it's fake, well, in order for you to say that it's fake, you need to have a comparison. So if you're comparing it as something that's fake, then you would need to compare it to something which is actually real, which would basically say you've already seen something which is real, which is how you know something is fake. Which doesn't really make sense, because if all you've ever seen are fake images, how would you know if something is real?
Exactly. We've got 81 watching. Thank you so much for everybody just showing up on time. And I know that there's no bell that will ring. We're in some sort of category, obviously. Can we get some of those thumbs up, please? That would be really great, and it helps. I think it's the only thing that's keeping the channel kind of afloat in terms of anyone knowing about it at all. Is the thumbs up. The ratio of thumbs up to watch is really high, and if we can keep doing that, that would be very, very helpful. And I keep getting fed this kind of interesting mosaic of information that's completely it's there's something to it, and this is why I bring it to everyone, is because there's something more going on here, something much bigger. And just like I want to keep it, because I know a lot more that I don't tell people, because I would sound like everybody else on YouTube. And I would be talking about, oh, well, that sounds like a sci-fi movie. So what I do is I stick to real things that you would have. Like I said, you've got to argue with the article. You've got to argue with whatever facts I give you. And I try to keep it really, really as close to the facts, or as close to the documentation that we have as possible. Oh, and by the way, Buster, while I was on the plane, I finally got to read the document that you had sent over about UFOs. Oh, of course I don't have it. Oh man, you sent over. It's like the next step for the gateway process. I want to talk to you off air about that a little bit, because it had a lot of great points, and the documentation and the references were pretty impeccable. But it was also talking about it was the human problem and the UFO issue, written in 1977.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
So it was talking about and I think it was predicting the internet. It sounds like where individuals can stay individual and yet become part of a hive mind. And that sounds to me like the internet. Like it was predicting that almost, but I could be reading a lot into that for all I know. So I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, it definitely was talking about a way in which people would be connecting to one another, exchanging information and exchanging ideas, being able to communicate across distances, and then but still having an identity and not being able to lose that. So, which kind of, yeah, like you said, it alludes to this idea of the internet where everyone can come together, exchange ideas, information, but still have a sense of self. And
Interesting.
that's not the only thing the document talks about, but it definitely goes along the lines of kind of it being a necessary component to evolution as like a next step. Basically, it's saying that I think they referred to it, the term was human linking, where basically it's
Hmm.
like this brain linkage between all humanity. And that's basically the next step in order for evolution to take place.
And I thought that was so interesting that it was talking about we're like in, what is it, the fifth stage of any kind of species that's evolving. And they were talking about the ability to, kind of stretch beyond the confines of being a normal animal and have, kind of have that sense of being and a sense of self and all of that. And because of that, the curse is you eventually create a society that, obviously always heads towards self-destruction. And the real magic are those societies that get to that sixth stage, and very few of them do. And right now, as of 1977, when that was written, it was in the fifth stage. And I think that it was talking about the internet being in the sixth stage. And I'm thinking, are we, especially with the things that have been happening lately in terms of the overall picture, in terms of censorship and everything else, are we kind of in the final death throes of the fifth stage and we're moving into that sixth stage, which people talk about aeons, people talk about, whatever it may be, but it's all different land for kind of the same thing that we're talking about. And it's just very interesting. I found it, and I was on the plane for I was in the air for 3 hours for one leg of the trip, so I was able to read the whole thing. And you're right, it's something you've got to go back to, because I underlined quite a few things because there was so much happening. But it's very, very interesting.
Yeah, one of the most interesting things I found about it was that it made a specific reference to once a species reaches the sixth age or the sixth stage of evolution, it said it basically becomes non-physical. It becomes like a non-corporeal entity, which I found
Mhm.
was really fascinating because they said that's basically the reason why we don't see other species out in existence in physical form. It's because they're non-physical. They've already at that stage where they become non-physical.
I read that too, and I found that pretty astonishing, especially considering what if, we're in this throes of censorship falling off, and even though it looks like we're going into the darkness, we're actually seeing light at the end of the tunnel, and yet we have suddenly, this UFO thing, which potentially could be, everyone, I would say it's about 98% fear and maybe 2% hope. What if you were to apply it to that 2% and say perhaps it's a sixth stage, kind of civilization reaching out to an emerging sixth stage, civilization. Now, this is speculation, everyone, and it sounds kind of new agey. And this is the point in the show where I tell you, obviously, I'm speculating at this point. There's nothing to argue with me here about it, because there's nothing to argue. I'm openly saying that I'm speculating. In terms of the document itself, when we release the document and I read it and understand it and ingest it better, then it has references to it's like a 7 or 9 page document and has 20 pages of references. So you go argue with the references. I don't have time to. So it's an interesting document. I'll give you that.
Yeah, absolutely. And basically, what the author was kind of getting the idea that um, the one human problem is the fact that the human species needs to have tools in order to evolve. Basically, he breaks down the species into species that use tools and species that don't use tools, where
Mhm.
human beings are in the category that we use tools, and that's basically our path to evolution. And he says one of the reasons why all of these UFO sightings, and this was back in 1977, had been occurring is because this next stage of evolution, the sixth stage, these beings are coming here basically to help us
Hmm.
in that transition, which
Hmm.
I found very
Interesting.
fascinating.
It is fascinating. Okay, so At this point, obviously, we have more watching. Can we get some of those thumbs up, please? It's the only thing that I think that gets the channel out, because I don't think we're being recommended very often. I know for a fact, including my contact, who says that the bell, they're never told. So you're not, it's not, it's not, the only way I think that anyone can know when the show is up is if you know the regular schedule, or if you get a notification from me on Twitter. In terms of notification on YouTube, I think it's iffy at best. At least from, it's now at this point, at least a dozen people, in the last 3 weeks have told me, and in various ways, that notifications aren't working. And I've reached out to YouTube numerous times, but I'm happy to even have a channel, considering what's going on. So, and we also have super chats. With those super chats, what we're going to do is figure out some kind of really great big project that we want to do right now. Buster, Chick, and myself, we've been playing around with this idea of some kind of really, really well done documentary, perhaps, or we don't know yet. So super chats are always welcome. But what really helps out on the day-to-day kind of thing is the thumbs up. The thumbs up, definitely. Jeremy Chris said I get the notifications on YouTube all the time. Okay, good. That's very good. Good to hear. All right, everybody. It's only a quick one, but I've been out all week and I had new information, and I just wanted to get that out there. So I appreciate everybody showing up like this. And now that I'm back and I get more settled, I'll get back on here more often, and I'll be able to talk to my contact more often. Also, too, coming up tomorrow, remember, I'm on Truth Frequency Radio at 5 o'clock Eastern doing the Lizard Ritual, which is my own solo show. I'll probably be talking about this and more. And obviously, Buster is always around for if you want to, share information with him to help along his research for the channel. Because at this point, SMQ AI is a team. It's not an individual. It's a group of people. So I just want to say thanks to everybody, and I appreciate it. Any last words, Buster?
I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their weekend.
All right, there you go. All right, everybody, take it easy. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye.